They stripped everything from him: his money, his title, his reputation, his freedom. They threw him into a prison cell and told him he was finished. They told him his name meant nothing anymore. They told him the world had moved on without him, and nobody was coming back. And for 3 years, 3 long, silent, crushing years, he sat in that darkness and believed them. He started answering to a number instead of his name. He started walking with his head down. He started forgetting the sound of his own laughter. He started forgetting what he believed in, what he stood for, what made him different from every other broken man sitting in that same darkness. And then one morning, not a special morning, not a morning with a sign from the sky, just an ordinary gray morning, he looked at his own hands, and something inside him spoke, not loudly, almost in a whisper. It said, "You are still you. Everything they took was never who you were." And in that moment, in that cell, with nothing, absolutely nothing left, he found the most powerful thing a human being can ever find. He found himself. And the day he walked out of that prison, he walked out taller than the day he walked in, because now he knew something that most people who have never lost everything will never know. He knew exactly who he was. Most people go their entire lives without knowing that. Most people build an identity out of things that can be taken: a job title, a bank balance, a relationship status, a social media following, a reputation in a community, a role in a family. And for a while, sometimes a long while, those things feel solid. They feel like you, until one day they are gone, and suddenly you are standing in the ruins of the life you built and asking a question that terrifies you more than any failure ever could. The question is, without all of this, who am I? That question is not a crisis. That question is an invitation, because the truth, the real, uncomfortable, liberating truth, is that you are not your job. You are not your salary. You are not your grades. You are not your social media profile. You are not the version of yourself that your family needs you to be. You are not the version that your friends are comfortable with. You are not your worst mistake. You are not your greatest achievement. You are not the story that other people have been telling about you since before you were old enough to tell your own. You are something far deeper than any of those things. And the tragedy of modern life, the quiet tragedy that nobody talks about at dinner tables or in therapy sessions or in motivational speeches, is that most people never go deep enough to find out what that deeper thing actually is. They live their entire lives on the surface. They perform, they adapt, they shrink, they expand in the wrong directions. They become experts at being whoever the room needs them to be, and they call it maturity, and they call it wisdom, and they call it being realistic. But what it actually is, what it really is beneath all those comfortable names, is forgetting. A slow, quiet, socially acceptable forgetting of who you actually are. And I need to ask you something. When was the last time you did something that had nothing to do with how it would look? When was the last time you made a decision based entirely on what you believed rather than what would be approved? When was the last time you sat in silence and listened to yourself, not to your anxiety, not to your obligations, not to your feed, not to the running commentary of other people's expectations, but to yourself? When was the last time you felt completely, uncomplicatedly, unapologetically like you? If you are struggling to remember, you are not alone, and you are not broken. You are just lost. And being lost is not a character flaw, it is a human condition. But here is what you need to understand about being lost. The longer you stay lost without realizing it, the more you begin to mistake the lostness for your identity. You begin to think that the tired, performing, shrinking, adapting version of yourself is who you actually are. You forget that there was ever anyone else in there, and that specific forgetting is the most dangerous thing that can happen to a human being. Not failure, not heartbreak, not poverty, not rejection, the forgetting of yourself, because everything else can be rebuilt. A business can be rebuilt. A relationship can be healed. A reputation can be restored. But if you have lost yourself, if you have spent so long becoming what the world wanted that you no longer know what you want, then rebuilding everything else will feel hollow because you will be building it for someone you do not recognize. Let me tell you about Nelson Mandela, not the legend, not the statue, the man who went into prison at 44 years old, a man with a burning vision, a powerful voice, a clear sense of mission. And the apartheid government did everything in their power to destroy not just his body, but his identity. They gave him a number. They forbade his words from being published. They isolated him. They offered him conditional freedom, walk out, but abandon who you are, abandon what you stand for, and you can go home. And Mandela said no. He stayed, not because he was fearless, not because prison was comfortable, but because he understood something that his captors did not. He understood that the moment he abandoned his values to gain his freedom, he would no longer be free. He would just be a man in a larger cage. He stayed 27 years, and he walked out of that prison not broken, but burnished, not diminished, but deepened, because he never forgot who he was, and the entire world, was changed because of it. Your identity is not a luxury, it is your foundation. Everything you build in life, every relationship, every career, every contribution you make to the world is built on top of who you believe yourself to be. If that foundation is made of borrowed opinions and performance and other people's expectations, then everything you build on, it will eventually crack, because foundations made of borrowed things cannot hold original weight. You cannot build an authentic life on an inauthentic self. It does not work. It has never worked. And deep down, in that quiet place you visit at 3 a.m. when nobody is watching, you already know that. Think about the last time you betrayed yourself, not a dramatic betrayal, a quiet one. The time you agreed when you actually disagreed, the time you laughed when something was not funny to you, the time you stayed silent when everything inside you wanted to speak, the time you chose the path that made everyone comfortable at the cost of the path that felt true. Think about how that felt in your body. The subtle contraction, the slight hollowness, the tiny erosion that you quickly covered over with busyness or distraction. Every time you do that, every single time, you are teaching yourself that your authentic self is not safe to show. You are training yourself to hide. And after years of those small, quiet betrayals, the hiding becomes so natural that you forget you are hiding. You just think that is what you are. It is not what you are. Here is what I know about identity. Real identity. The kind that holds under pressure. The kind that survives loss. The kind that walks out of prison taller than it walked in. Is not built from what you have. It is built from what you believe, from what you value, from what makes you angry because it matters to you, from what makes you cry because beauty or injustice moved you, from the ideas that keep you up at night, not with anxiety, but with possibility, from the things you would do even if nobody was watching and nobody would ever applaud, from the moments when you acted from your deepest instinct rather than your most calculated performance. That is where your real identity lives, in those unguarded, unperformed, unoptimized moments. And the mission, the most important mission of your life, more important than any career goal or financial target, is to know that person, to keep knowing that person even as life tries to cover them up with obligation and expectation and fear and failure and success and all the 1,000 ways the world tries to reshape you in its own image, because the world will try. That I can promise you, the world is incredibly good at this. It starts when you are very young. Someone tells you that you are too much, too loud, too sensitive, too ambitious, too idealistic, too creative, too different. And because you are young and you need to belong, you make yourself smaller. You turn down the volume. You soften the edges. You learn to fit. And that learning is not entirely bad. Some of it is necessary social development, but some of it, a significant, painful, important sum of it, is self-erasure, and nobody flags it for you at the time. Nobody says careful. You are not just learning to be polite, you are also learning to disappear. Nobody tells you that one day you will have to go back and find the parts of yourself you left behind in all those moments of shrinking. One day you will have to deliberately, consciously, sometimes painfully choose yourself again, not the acceptable version, not the convenient version, the actual you. And I want to talk about the people in your life right now, because some of them, not all of them, but some, know a version of you that is not fully you. They fell in love with the performance. They got comfortable with the edited version. They need you to stay consistent with who you have been so that their understanding of the world remains stable. And they are not necessarily bad people for this, but they are asking something of you, consciously or not, that you cannot keep giving without cost. They are asking you to stay small so that they can stay comfortable. And every time you comply, every time you flatten yourself to fit their frame, you pay a price. The price is you. Some of the loneliest moments in human life are not when you are alone. They are when you are surrounded by people who love a version of you that is not fully true, who celebrate achievements that do not actually fulfill you, who comfort you in ways that miss the actual wound, who do not know, because you have not shown them, the parts of you that are most alive, most strange, most genuinely original. That loneliness is a signal. It is not a sign that something is wrong with the people around you. It is a sign that something is buried inside you that needs to come out. There is a story that moves me deeply every time I think about it. A sculptor was once asked how he carved such extraordinary figures from blocks of stone. And he said, I do not add anything. I simply remove everything. That is not the figure. The figure was always there, inside the stone. I just freed it. You are that figure. You were always that figure. Inside the stone of conditioning, expectation, fear, performance, adaptation, approval seeking, inside all of that, you have always been there. The work is not to become someone new. The work is to remove everything that is not you, to chisel away the layers of who the world told you to be, until what remains is undeniably, unmistakably, powerfully yourself. And I know that sounds simple. I know it sounds like the kind of thing that fits neatly on a poster, but I want you to understand that this is one of the hardest and most courageous acts a human being can perform, because removing those layers means disappointing people. It means outgrowing relationships that no longer fit. It means choosing truth over comfort in conversations where comfort would be so much easier. It means standing in the discomfort of being seen, really seen, without the armor of performance. It means saying, I have changed, or I was wrong, or this is not actually who I am, even when those sentences cost you something real. The courage required to be genuinely yourself in a world that profits from your conformity is extraordinary, and nobody gives you a medal for it. But something better happens, something you cannot buy or perform or optimize. You begin to feel at home in your own skin. And once you know what that feels like, you will never willingly give it up again. Let me talk about something that happens to people who achieve great things before they know themselves. They win the prize and feel nothing. They get the promotion and feel hollow. They build the successful business and find themselves sitting in their expensive office at midnight wondering why they feel so lost. They did everything right by every external measure. They hit every target. And still, there is that persistent, quiet, devastating emptiness, because the achievement was built on a foundation that was never truly theirs. They were chasing someone else's definition of success. They were running someone else's race. And when they crossed the finish line, they looked around and realized, this is not my victory. I do not even recognize this destination, because they forgot somewhere along the way, in the hustle, in the performance, in the relentless optimization of their outward life, they forgot who they were running for. Success that is disconnected from identity is just sophisticated suffering. You need to know what you actually want, not what you are supposed to want, not what makes logical sense, given your background and education and family expectations. What you actually, genuinely, in the quiet of your most honest moment, want. And I am not just talking about career goals or financial milestones. I am talking about the texture of a life that feels true to you, how you want to spend ordinary Tuesday mornings. What kind of conversations make you feel more alive? What work makes you forget to check your phone? What relationships make you feel free rather than managed? What version of yourself makes you feel like you are finally in the right body, the right life, the right story? You need to know that. And you need to be willing to let that knowing guide you, even when it is inconvenient, even when it disappoints people, even when it requires burning down something you worked very hard to build. Because a life built on a false version of yourself is not a life. It is a very elaborate, very exhausting, very convincing performance. And you deserve more than a performance. You deserve the real thing. There is a version of you that has never been fully shown to the world, a version that is wiser and stranger and more original than the one you have been presenting, a version that has things to say that nobody else can say because nobody else has your specific combination of wounds and wisdom and wonder, a version that, if you would only stop performing long enough to let it breathe, would change the quality of your relationships, the direction of your work, the depth of your impact on everyone you touch. That version is not a future version. It is not a version you need to earn through more suffering, or more achievement, or more therapy, or more time. That version is you, right now, underneath everything, waiting not to be created, but simply to be remembered. So remember. Remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Remember the things that lit you up before you learned to be practical. Remember the questions you asked before you learned it was safer not to ask. Remember the dreams you had before someone taught you to scale them down to a size that would not embarrass you if they failed. Remember the moments when you were so completely yourself that you forgot to perform for anyone. Remember what you believe when nobody is arguing with you. Remember what you love when nobody is watching. Remember what you are willing to stand for, even when standing costs you something. Remember the sound of your own instinct before the noise of other people's opinions drowned it out. You are not who your worst day said you were. You are not who your greatest fear tells you that you are. You are not the sum of your failures, or the total of your achievements, or the reflection in anyone else's eyes. You are something specific and original and irreplaceable that the world has never seen before and will never see again. And the single greatest act of courage you can perform in this one life you have been given is to know that, to really know it, not just as a phrase on a screen, but as a lived, breathing, daily, relentless commitment, and to refuse, in the face of every pressure to forget, to ever forget it. Never forget who you are. Not when life hits you, not when they take everything, not when the world goes quiet and you are alone with the question, not when success arrives and tries to rewrite you, not when failure arrives and tries to define you, not when the people you love need you to be smaller, not when the world needs you to be safer. You are you. That is not a small thing. That is everything.